Hey guys, Phil here. It's been a while since I've done a video. Let's talk about what I'm going to do today. I'm going to be creating a Ruby on Rails kind of front, middle, end to a OpenAI API backend. You will need your own API key for this. What we're going to end up with at the end of it is something that looks like this and that will do pretty much everything you see in the Chatgpt website. It will let you log in as a user using Devise. It will let you create multiple chats. It will save those chats to that user, and it will let you retrieve those chats so that you can continue the conversation later on with your chatbot. I hope that's exciting and interesting. Let's get into it. And let's create a Rails app here. So, you know, I'm a Bootstrap person, so we're going to call this Rails OpenAI. And let's do a database. Today we're going to use Postgres, and we'll use a CSS of Bootstrap, and we're not going to include any tests. Let's just get into it. So let's create that. We're using Rails 706 and I believe Ruby 322 maybe. I didn't really check, but I'll check that when I'm done. Something like that. This is going to take a minute to do all of its stuff. It's pretty simple, really, this app. Kind of the only difficult things are the updating of the chat as you're going along. And I'm not going to do anything too fancy. I'm going to use a little bit of turbo for that. And there we go. So let's move into Rails OpenAI, and we're going to do Devise, and we'll do the Devise install afterwards, and what the hell we'll do create the user object while we're here. And I think we'll add these development gems of annotate and letter opener. And we should be good to go. So we can now go to VS Code, and let's open. Actually, probably the easiest thing is if we open the parent of this, and let's just drag this onto there. Done. So there we are. So we've got our usual Rails configuration. We're going to quickly add some seed data, simply because I can't be bothered to create new users through the user interface. Let's just create some users. Bob, Carol, Ted, and Alice, for those of you who are fans of the 1970s. So we've got that, and they're just going to create those with a password of password. And I'm just going to go through my notes, you know, and all right. Again, you know, I'm going to just do the stuff that I like to do, and that is I like to use Docker Compose to be precise. So we're going to create a Docker Compose YAML file, and here it is. And let's take a, just copy the stuff over and I'll go through it. A little bit bigger for you. So, pretty standard Docker Compose. We're going to be using Postgres 14.8. I know there's a bunch of, it doesn't really matter. This is the standard thing you do with Postgres, and I'm going to use Redis on here as well, and we'll associate the volumes. And you see that I'm using environment variables here to set the Postgres password, to set the Postgres port, and to set the Redis port. So that means that we need a .n file. And before we can use .n file, of course, we need to add .env-rails. So we're going to add into development and test .env-rails. And let's set up our .n file. Oh man. So we do this port. If you're using something like Nginx or whatever, you want to maybe switch the port around. I like to. So this will be the port for the Rails application. This is the port for Redis. You saw it over here, Redis port. So we're going to be publishing on 16679. This is the Redis URL that's used in other places. Set the Postgres port and host and the password. So that's that. And I'm going to update the proc file. For some reason, I don't know why you would do this, but the default is to unset port so that it has to run on port 3000, but I don't like to do that. In this particular case, it doesn't really matter. I'm not doing anything with it, but just to let you know what I like to do. And of course, we need to update the database YAML, and we can get rid of almost all of this. First of all, of course, we can get rid of all these crazy comments. And then we can set the host, port, username and password. Incredible amount of comments in this file, actually. No, I missed it. Okay, it's not working. Just copy it over like this. And so we're going to set there in development and there, and then of course in production you would normally do just a URL. Again, get rid of all these comments. Anyway, so there's our database YAML that pulls everything out of the N file. We're not in production, so we don't have a database URL. And then because we're doing this, let's change the cable HTML, because this is going to be used, I believe, for Turbo and Hotwire and Stimulus would use cable, action cable. So we're going to change that to make sure that it reads the Redis URL out of the N file. Again, so whipping through it here, that's all of our configuration set up. So now we have a Rails app that is connected to Docker and for Redis and Postgres, and has Devise installed. Everything is good to go. So we can get down. I'm just going to quickly. Well, let's prepare it. And okay. So we can now do a Docker compose up -d, and that will create these things. And if we quickly go and look at Docker compose, you see we've got the Rails OpenAI container, Postgres and Redis in there. And we can do a Rails DB prepare. Interesting thing about Rails DB prepare is that if there's no database, it will create the database, migrate the database, and seed the database. If there is a database already in existence, it doesn't do the seeding. I'm sure somebody thought that was clever, but it actually means that if you've already done this once, you won't reseed. So yeah, if you do DB create and then DB prepare, it will not seed the data. But if we quickly take a look, we can see user.last, we have our user data in there. So we're all good to go. So if we wanted to run the proc file, we're running on port 3000. So we go to localhost 3000. We'll see the Rails welcome screen, and you can see, I'm using Ruby 3.2.2. So we don't want to see that. Let's quit our app and let's start making some actual stuff. So yes, I'm going to use scaffolding because it's just the fastest way, and we'll just do the bits we need. So we're going to create a scaffold. We're going to create an object called chat, and it will refer to a user. It will be owned by a user. It will have a history, which is JSON, and that's coming out of OpenAI. And then we'll have a Q&A, which is actually going to be an array of questions and answers that we will use to store our questions and OpenAI's answer. So the interesting thing, if we go over here, string, we can say array true and default of whatever, empty array. That's all you need to do to store an array in Rails in the database. So there we go. Now some people say, well, you shouldn't be storing an array, and probably if I was doing this in the real world, I would have a message object that had a question and answer, and I would have an array of message objects or an association of message objects on the chat. But I'm just doing something quick and dirty to show you guys. So we've got that, and I believe also, oh yeah, if we look at the user, let's say we has many chats, which of course we want to destroy if we destroy the user. And I think that's, oh yeah, well, I guess we can change the roots now. And let's change the root in root to be chats index. And that's it. We can do a Rails DB migrate to get our chat object. So now if we run, man, I'm flying. I've had a couple of coffees, so that's probably why. So if we take a look, we've got this typical horrible thing where you could create a chat and everything like that. And it's kind of using Bootstrap, but kind of not. So a lot of what we're going to do now is Bootstrappy and Devise-y stuff. First thing, I don't want anybody to use this application without being logged in. It just makes life a little bit easier. So we're just going to set a before action of authenticate user. So that means that if I go here, I'm going to have to log in first. So if we're going to have to log in, why don't we make the login look a little bit nicer? So let's Rails generate the Devise views. That will give us all the Devise views that we can then override. And in this particular case, I think I only really, I'm not doing everything. We already have users, so I'm not going to do the create a new user form. Let's just do a session new form. Right, which is this one. And let's toast that. And we have a new bootstrappy one here. Let's go through this. So we're going to create a row, and we'll put everything in the middle, and we're going to justify the content in the middle. And that means that when we have a column that we've set to be half as wide as the page, 6, because the page in Bootstrap is 12 wide. So 6, that means that it'll float in the middle if we do this justify content center. So we've got the column there, and we'll do some flex columns inside of that, and we're going to set the email. This is a form to create a resource, and the resource in this case is a user, so or session, sorry. So we're going to give the user their email to log in. We're setting the classes of form control and form label and the password and remember me checkbox if you so wish, and login button that's a nice blue, and those other links to create, and so on like that. So now if we refresh, instead we get something that looks like that, and of course we don't want that comment there. We get something that looks like that. So there's our login form, all done. So now let's go log in as Bob here. Great. So Bob's in, and now let's get on with it. I think I'm about 15 minutes in. Let's get down to using OpenAI. So the first thing, of course, I'm going to shut down the app for a minute. Let's bundle add ruby-openai. And let's, where are you? Config initializers. We're going to need an initializer, openai.rb. And what we're going to do is this. We need to set our access token. And so that means OpenAI access token has to be in our .env file. And it is like that, what is my, I'm going to have to do it. So let me get it. I'll have to blur it out. You set your own OpenAI access token. I can't remember exactly where you get that. OpenAI.com. And you see view your API key up there, and that's where you get your API keys. And here they are. I have a bunch of them. Okay. So that's been saved, and I'm just gonna quickly, I'll have to edit the video here. There we go. So the OpenAPI token is in there now. And yeah, we're good to go. So let's make this look a little bit better. I didn't turn my light on, guys. Let's see. How's that? That's better. Dummy. All right. So let's fix this layout. Let's go to our application HTML and change the body here. So, by the way, if you haven't seen me before, you know that my typing is very bad, mildly dyslexic to be honest, and it takes me a long time to type correctly. That's why I'm pasting. So, thank God for code completion. So what we're going to do again is we're going to create a container. So we container fluid, which is full width, it's flex. We're going to create a row, and we're going to split that into 2 columns. If you look at the Chatgpt, you can see, okay, we've got 2 columns. We've got this one on the left, which houses all your chats, and this one on the right, which is your actual content. So we're going to do the same kind of thing. We're going to create a column of 2 wide on the left, which will initially it starts out with the new chat, and something missing there, I think. Starts out with the new chat button at the top, and then we have a yield for the main content, which goes on the right. So we refresh and start the app server. There we go. So we've got a new chat button here, and this we still don't, I mean, we don't really want that. So how do we do all of this? All right. I think we have this. This is okay. Our button is it's on a form, so that means we can do a turbo stream with that easily enough, and we've got the form submit. And if we look over here, I'm just going to clear that up, and if I hit my button, nothing happens, and it goes through. There's no parameters, and it's a turbo stream request. So here's what we need to do. First of all, it's saying parameter missing. That means because we're just passing in a form, we're passing in a form but it doesn't have any chat object. And you know, we used a scaffold to create this. And so what it's expecting, oh yes, and of course we're hitting create directly. You know, we're not doing a new. There is no point to doing a new here. There's nothing for the user to fill in, you know. It's just, you know, calls and responses. And we don't want to automatically create a session with OpenAI. There's no point to do that. So we do it when the user clicks a new. So instead of going to chats controller new, we're going to chats controller create, which is the handling of creating a new chat object. So what it wants to do on the create is get the chat parameters and create a chat. And you know, we don't really need to do that. So instead of chat parameters, we know that we want a user ID, right, of the current user. And I don't think we need to set these other things. They will be set by default. That's all we need. And we want a format turbo stream. Now this is the way I do it. I think there's a lot of different ways to possibly do this, but this is the way I'm doing it. So in the views for chats, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new create.turbostream.erb. And what happens there is that if we go and look, okay, I haven't set those yet. So what we want to have down the left-hand side, as you know, we want to have a list of all your chats. So let's do that first. So what we could do, not what we could do, what we will do is we want to create a turbo frame here. So underneath the new button, we want to create a turbo frame. And we'll set the ID to be user chats. And actually what I'm going to do is put another div around this. And just to, so we can control the formatting a little bit, and put a margin at the top. And do we need to do anything else? And maybe we'll set a H4 today. And there we go. So now if we take a look, you see we've got the today, and we can render a partial. And I'm going to call this chat list. And I'm going to do this on a collection. See, Copilot's not so smart. I'm going to do it on a collection, which is going to be the current user chats reverse. So you'll have the newest one at the top, if there is such a thing as a current user. And to be honest, I don't even want to show that. Oops, the new button. If there's no current user, if they're not logged in. Obviously, there's nicer ways to handle this. So there's no partial called chat list. So let's make a partial called chat list. And for now, we're just going to leave it blank. Not that. Let's do chatlist.id. Now, the thing to remember, see what I mean about typing? The thing to remember, when you do something like this, partial chat list with a collection, it's going to iterate over this collection and pass in the object that you're dealing with as the name of the partial. I don't know who decided that. It's a bit silly, I guess, but whatever, it works. So that means that inside of here, the thing is going to be called, chat list, because we called it chat list. So the chat object is going to be called chat list. Just going to do that. It's not going to have anything because we don't have anything. Now, if I create, and then, all right, don't need that anymore. Don't need that for the session. We don't need that anymore. We're working on that right now. We've already said, okay, do the turbo stream. No, I'm not. That's stupid. Why would I do that? So in my create turbo stream, what I want to do is this. So in my user chats stream, where are you? Here, user chats. It's a turbo frame with an ID of user chats. So inside of that, let's render another chat list using the @chat object, which is the object that gets created inside of inside of the create. Hope that makes sense. So if I click here, let's take a look at that. We do that. There, 1. We've actually inserted into chats. There. And we've got it there. And if I do that, C2, I'm not doing any breaks. So it's, yeah. Obviously, we're not going to keep that chat list looking like that. And that's cool. We've created a whole bunch of chats. And let's leave it like that for now. No, I can't. Row, and then let's call. Let's move that in there, and let's just refresh. And because we're seeing the chat index here, we're seeing all these chats in that ridiculous way that Rails defaults to doing. So we don't want to do that. It's perfect time now to take a look at the index and what I do want to do. So in the index, I don't want to do that. First of all, I want chat just for the nice, oh my god, chat's none. So it's going to be not a nil, but it's going to be a nil chat object. And then if current user chats any. This is kind of inefficient. You wouldn't do this in a production database that's got a lot of chats. what we're going to do is redirect to the chat URL with the current user's last chat. So that means whenever we hit index, it'll actually redirect to a chat. And you can see there, chat 3. Now, nice thing, if I destroy this chat, there they go. Ding, ding, gone. So now, you know, we are going to see the chat's index because we don't have any classes, any chats left. So let's quickly here. We don't want to do that. We don't want to do a new chat because that will take us to this window that doesn't make any sense for us. What we want to do is this, and that is you don't have any chats yet. That's something like what Chatgpt says. Create one by clicking, and then I've just taken the code from the layout and put it here as well. So now we'll see that, and it'll just do the same thing as there. But I hear you say, okay, we've done all that stuff. That's cool, but there's no chatting in here. Where's the chat in Chatgpt? All right, my friend, let's get on with it. Let me check my notes. What I decided to do is, okay, first, no, I'm going to step back up here. Let's talk about what I am actually doing with the controller. And that is after you finish the create. Where are you? Let's have more windows open. Here, there's another line. In the create turbo stream, we're also going to do that. And that is we're going to replace some other turbo stream that's called current chat with a partial that shows the new chat. So where is this partial, this current chat turbo stream, you say? And it is incredibly here. So we have this chat. This is the chat layout that Rails gives you by default. We don't like that. We're going to do something like this. Well, that's a bit extreme to do. Anyway, so what we're going to do is create a turbo frame with current chat. And we have a DOM ID of the chat, and we can get rid of this stuff for now because it's not going to work because we're not there yet. So we're going to create, now the reason I create this turbo frame inside of this partial and not outside is because once we replace it, if the turbo frame's not inside, it will get removed from the page, you know, because of the way turbo replaces things. So I put it inside the partial. Again, maybe I'm doing it wrong, but that's what I do. So here we are. And we want to get rid of this, destroy the chat, back to chat. So in the show, let's get rid of this stuff because we're seeing a show right here. So you can see I've got send message, and the other thing, I'm going to use font awesome here. So I'm going to put in my own font awesome kit. So you will need to do that as well, or use a different font provider. There. So we've got my send a message thing in here that will, in theory, what it will do is send, not you, not you, you, again, I'm creating a form with the model for the chat, so we know which chat we're dealing with. This is the chat that is handed in when we render. And I've got a text field which is of a message. And you say, hold on, there's no message in the chat object. You say, that's right. So we're going to do an attribute accessor of message. So that when I submit this, what should I do today? Where are you? There it is. And the message is, what should I do today? And it says there's an unpermitted parameter of message. So let's fix that in the chats controller. We don't need anything here because the only thing we're going to let a user submit is that message. So let's do that again. What should I do today? I'm going to send it and we see, okay, it's got a chats controller update with turbo stream of what should I do today, and it's not going to do anything because there's no such message, no such method. So here it is, update chat params. So this is my clever solution. And so here we are, half an hour in. This is going to be the conversation with OpenAI. And I'll show you exactly what I do and what I believe you have to do. So let's go and close all the others and let's look here. What I do is def message equals message. And we can see what our fields are. I'm not quite sure why it's not running automatically. So annotate models. And we can see these are our fields we've got. So what we want to do is, first of all, get a client. So let's, in private def client, nothing. And that will return an OpenAI client new. We don't need to pass any parameters because we've done that OpenAI config initializer. So talking to OpenAI is pretty simple. It looks something like this. So once you have your client, you say chat. Let's chat with the client. We pick a model. You can go through, there's many models available. Of course, Chatgpt 4. I'm going to use Chatgpt 3.5 Turbo on this one. And then we can set these other other attributes, temperature and max tokens. You can kind of leave that the same. You can read about that on the OpenAI website, and they will give you more insight into what all of these things can do and change temperatures, kind of like how creative it is, which is kind of cool. And so messages. Now, we could just say message, but that won't work. What you really need to do is something like this. You need to pass in something that looks like this, which is role of user and the content of a message. But the first time you call it, that is actually the prompt. It's interesting that people don't talk about that so much, but But when you can call ChatGPT, the very first thing you do, that is the ChatGPT prompt. Everything else after that are simply questions referring to that prompt. So the first prompt is the most important. And when you call that, you don't say user, you say system. And we're going to create an array that looks like this. And that will get passed in. And let's, oh no, there we go. So response raw, chat client, and let's put this out. And the reason I do this here on the message equal, that means that when we create or update and pass in a new message, that message will be used to go out and prompt ChatGPT. Perhaps if I was doing this in the real world, I would do it slightly differently in that I would do it in perhaps a sidekick or, you know, some kind of background job and go off and do it like that. But here we're kind of blocking. It doesn't really matter in a demo like this. So we're going to look at the response raw. So let's do it again. And so I'm going to get rid of that. Send my message of what should I do today. And it's going to take its time. It's going out and talking to Chatgpt, I hope. And any minute now, it'll come back. And there it is. So we can see it's responded. This is the response. And there are many things you can do today depending on your interests and preferences. And you get a whole bunch of other interesting stuff here. You know, like when it was created, what model it specifically used, the ID inside of Chatgpt, how many prompt tokens there were, how many completion tokens there were, and the total tokens that you used, and all the rest of that. But this message content is the answer, right? So what we want to do is take that answer and put it into our Q&A. Now, I'm not a big fan of the way it comes back. I like to use this, whatever you call it, notation where you know, the JSON is actually an object. So I'm going to just parse that into an open struct. You can do that or not. You can do it a different way. You could use dig here or whatever, but I'm just going to use it like this. So that will stuff into Q&A. Let's do it one more time. What should I do today? And it's, is it often asking? No. There we are. It's what should I do today? It's often asking. And there, it's updated the chats and it's set the Q&A to be the question will be what should I do today, and the answer is this. So we have our first response from OpenAI ChatGPT. We don't see it. So let's see it. So that's when we can go back here and look at our chat, and we want to put stuff in here. And this is what I do. Nope. This is what I do here. So I create a history area, and unless the Q&A is blank, of course, we want to go through the Q&A and show the question and then show the answer. Now the stuff that comes back from ChatGPT, as you can see, is formatted with new lines here. So we can use the helper called simple format, which will simply format that text. And so if I refresh here, there we are. What should I do today? You should consider these options. Go for a hike, visit a museum. It's very erudite, ChatGPT. And we're good to go. But if we want to ask a second question, how does that work? Because right now it's not really ChatGPT, it's kind of like dictate GPT. So let's take a look at all we need to do to continue the conversation. It's nothing clever, and it's surprising actually. You simply send everything that you've already talked about back to ChatGPT, and it continues the conversation. So what we do is this. So we've already got the message, and we say that first message that came in, is that if, which I just realized now is incorrect. But if Q&A has a size greater than 0, we want to do this, else that. So we only want to set this role system of the current message if we do that. And because what we actually want to do, just realizing something, role system of, actually no, I'm totally wrong. I was right the first time. So we're going to set the first, the current message to be the system message, and then we're going to go through and add the Q&As back in, and then send the whole thing back to Chatgpt with the last message being the current question. So here's what that should look like. And what about tomorrow? So if we go over here, let's clear this, let's send that. So the question is, and what about tomorrow? I'm sending everything back to Chatgpt. It will see what I've done, and then it'll say, for tomorrow, here's some suggestions. Start your day with some exercises. You can see it's totally different. So we're in a conversation with Chatgpt. That's pretty much it, done and dusted. Now the thing I'd like to do is to save the raw response though, because and that's why I have this history object. The raw response has some cool things that maybe you would want to show, like in a hover or a tooltip or something, like how many tokens were used, because you can't find that out actually in Chatgpt. So you see all the tokens and everything like that. So that's nice. I'm just going to save that off for no other reason. And I think we're pretty much done. Right? Oh yeah, the only other thing is, of course, this is ugly here. So what I quickly want to do is I'm going to go to Chat's helper, plop this in, which gives me a list name, and then let's update this chat list here to something better. And what we're going to do is we'll show a little message icon just like Chatgpt does. We're going to show a list name like Chatgpt does, which in this case will be like the first 20 characters of the question, or the ID if there is no question for some reason. And then we'll also have the ability to delete. So if I refresh now, you can see, what should I do? That's my question. If I create a new chat, how long does it take to write a piece of software? You can see right now it's called Chat 5. And, oh, that doesn't update. Anyway, how long does it take to write a piece of software? Time takes to write a piece of software can vary greatly. I've done it in 49 minutes. So I hope this helps you out. I think it's pretty neat to see how simple it really is to do something like this. You know, there's actually a bunch of people out there who have wrappers for OpenAI, but now you can have one too if you want to take this code and create your own thing. Please be my guest. I would suggest you make it a little bit more robust than it is right now. But there it is. We have Chatgpt talked to from a Ruby on Rails front and middle end, I would say, and pretty neat. So now you can ask all the questions you want to ask. And how long does it take to write a piece of software? Hope you've liked this. Like, subscribe, bell notification. I think that's the way it works. And I'm going to have an article, text article about this, probably on my Medium or on my Substack or something like that, in case you prefer to read instead of watch a video. And I hope to have another video soon. Hope you've enjoyed this. I hope it worked. And we'll see you soon. Thanks for watching.